travelled from Ireland straight into the heart of Transylvania. Currently, I'm in Sibiu. It's a small town in the heart of this mystical place that is filled with medieval stories that captivate the human imagination. There really is something about this place. Everywhere and everything you look, it just tells a story. Me being a filmmaker and photographer, this is paradise for me, as everything needs to be captured. And it seems that the people of the land are also some sort of mystical creatures, because against all odds, in this small city, one of the most extraordinary technologies have conquered the globe. I am here to discover the story of Elrond, one of the most respected blockchain technology companies in the world. A company that has reached billions of dollars valuation in less than 2 years and is promising to improve the future of mankind through the state-of-the-art technology. My good friend Hi-Rez sent me out here to show the inside daily life of Elrond from an outsider's perspective, which is new to the blockchain space. For me, this truly has been an amazing experience. What's the story behind this company? Let's find out. I am speaking today with the man himself, Beniamin Mincu, Elrond co-founder and CEO. First off, I love this city. It has a lot of charm. Out of all the places in the world, what makes Sibiu a good place to start Elrond?
This is a great question because I believe it poses a bit of a challenge. So Sibiu is of course a very small town. It's conservative. And then of course a lot of the things that you might do in the city at first are just not going to be accepted. So this means that you have to overcompensate, over-deliver, and then if you can overcome this initial obstacle, at that point Sibiu can become a really great advantage because you don't have distractions, it's really focused, and you can really build the stuff that you want to build. But I'd say that other than us being here, we could have, at least this is how I see it at this point, created things in other places as well, and it's probably the challenge would have been a bit different. But at the end of the day, the most interesting thing about Sibiu is that at this point it's extremely cool for us because it provides this structure for a lot of focus that we're doing. But then other than that, we're not necessarily living here because everything is on the internet and our communities are around the world and all of that.
It seems like an impossible task to gather so many smart people in just one small town. How did you do it? What's your magic wand?
This one is very tricky because I think just as I've outlined before, the really tricky thing is that in a small town you usually don't have enough talent pool with the kind of caliber that you'd want to start something like this. So in order to do it, we've literally looked for some very, very special people that were not only exceptionally talented, but then that I was extremely interested in them being able to extrapolate in a record time what they've learned in some particular field. We always reiterate this, that at Elrond we've built a team with which we can literally build rockets. But then getting the initial team meant that in this type of conservative town, it's a very, very tricky thing. So it's an entire conversation with each of the around 10 people that we've discussed initially. For each of them, I had basically a very special technical challenge that referred to something that they worked on afterwards. And I guess they were not only very talented, able to extrapolate stuff, but then there was also a bit of a degree of craziness at first, because whenever you're in a very good position and everything is nice, hearing about something like this, of course, when nothing like this has happened in your life and so forth, will sound at least a bit outlandish. to say the least. But then once we've started discussing about the technical challenge, I think this calibrated a lot of the conversation, because this you can not fake. There's no way around the technical challenge. You either solve it, which is extremely tricky, or not. And then as soon as we started sitting in a room together and discussing this type of conversation, with each step we've made, there was something like a silent thrill there, that the challenge was solvable, that we could do it, and that seeing other really talented guys pushing on this, it was tremendously fascinating. And so that moment was extremely special, extremely challenging, and then even now seeing it as it happened, in the span of 1 month, we had this hypothesis that there was a breakthrough, that we could build this. And then at the end of the month, we had the conclusion that this was totally doable, that we've solved the math, and now it was time to not only have the, let's say, theoretical breakthrough, but then move forward and start building it. And that was an even more difficult challenge than the first step.
What about the EU? I mean, you are probably one of the most popular blockchain companies in Europe. How does the EU welcome you? Do you feel the EU is proud of its blockchain innovation?
I think there's an interesting history with the EU, where Europe was at some point in history the epicenter of science, engineering, and artistic exploration. You could say that at this point, at some point they've reached the peak, and then resting on that peak, it seems like the spirit of exploration has sort of moved to some other places to drive and push people forward and gather them together. But I do believe that Elrond has the potential to be perhaps one of the most ambitious startups that we'll see throughout the next decade and beyond, coming from Europe and not escaping Europe, but rather being built in Europe, of course expanding around the world in several other countries and continents and so forth, but having some really strong roots that then kindle a new type of wave, where other startups come out of Europe and other places, and then they build the communities, they build the technologies and so forth. And I also say that Europe is right now, it seems to me, at kind of crossroad. It can either reinvent itself and start attracting the bright minds again, the talented people, the technical engineers and artists and so forth, or it can lose the battle or lose the race completely, because it seems like, whether you're discussing about artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and so forth, there are some places in the world where a lot more people are doing this stuff, and there's always a possibility of Europe, let's say, screwing things up because of some specific either legal challenge or some other type of obstacle, and not paying attention to the huge opportunity costs and implications if that were to happen. So I think we are in a very special position, and we're trying to do the best we can within Romania, within Europe, and beyond. We have a very wide community around the world and so forth. But I think for now we've not seen, let's say, either too much support or too much, not even specific obstacles yet, which is good. I mean, it could be a lot worse and it could be a lot better. But if I were to look from the government standpoint, I would definitely try to consider what needs to be done so that Europe becomes a backbone for this type of technical conversations, breakthroughs, artistic explorations, and so forth, as it once was. Because otherwise, things will move, they'll move fast, they'll just happen somewhere else. And at the end of the day, we definitely want at least part of this next chapter of history to unfold in Europe as well.
What is your organization like? How do people work together at Elrond? How are you being efficient and fast?
We're in a very special position with respect to the culture, because the culture at Elrond is very, very different. The idea that we're trying to be very upfront about is that at Elrond, the team is like a special forces SWAT team, in that things are very challenging, they require a lot of hardcore effort and attention to details and care. And this is not obviously for everyone, but then the people that come here, they know they're superheroes. And this is really great. We try to keep that type of standard. And then beyond that, the most important thing probably is trying to be super useful with whatever happens. So it doesn't matter if it's something that you need to do or someone else needs to do. The idea of trying to be super useful wherever you are, to make sure that something is achieved in record time and things can move forward, that's really important. And then at the end of the day, of course, it's all about impact. And I'm convinced that we would not be here, we would not build what we're building, and we would not push as hard if it were not clear for us that this could indeed be one of the most highest impact technologies that accelerates economic growth around the world, just like the internet did. So this is why we're pushing extremely hard, trying to make this thing happen. Of course, we're trying to always gather exceptional team members that can contribute to this goal, because like smart, resourceful people are always welcome. They're always in great need. And so whoever just looks at stuff and discovers Elrond, if they want to contribute, they are super, super welcome, and would love to hear from them.
Let's see if I get this right. Against all odds, you've developed this impossible tech. Everything is live, people are starting to use your tools, and the ecosystem is growing, correct?
I'd say we've definitely come a very, very long way. It was a very difficult position to start from at the beginning, but then as things gradually moved forward and the obstacles were solved, of course, this became a very, very good position that we're now in. But then even here, we're taking things with a lot of care and a lot of excitement for what's to come. And so we do have a technology that's live and is used in some very, very important places, whether it's startups, enterprises, and so forth around the world. We do have a very large and super passionate community in a lot of countries around the world, and that's awesome. And so I think we're now at this point where a next chapter is about to begin. And so even larger players, even more special, let's say, applications are being developed, and as they're going to be announced, this technology will just take or enter a different type of phase, where it was the phase where everybody rejected the technology, then a phase where people tried to make fun, at least a bit of it, as it happens right now with Web3 and blockchain and so forth. And then there's almost a phase where people go in the exact opposite extreme, where not only is everyone on board, but they try to erase their memories of what it seemed like before. So I do believe that we're very close to that point, and Elrond is in a special position, I can't wait for us to push forward with this special community and with the special partners, because there's a great number of validators, of just builders within the community, and people from around the world that push and try to come with new ideas, new applications, and so forth each day. So that yeah, puts us in a very special position, and we're fortunate to be able to push forward from here.
So it seems to me like the mission has been accomplished. What's next?
The idea with Elrond is that at the end of the day, the question is why we're doing this again. Why is it super important that we deliver this type of technology, and especially this type of solution? And I believe that at the end of the day, blockchain technology, if done right, will probably be the most important GDP multiplier for economic growth around the world since the invention of the internet. Which means that for one, we'll have a much larger pie to share with everyone, will create completely new markets, completely new applications and so forth, and that's tremendously interesting and exciting. But there's also a different type of thing where there's still 1.7 billion people that don't have any type of financial access. And so part of Elrond's goal is not only to create this much more high performance infrastructure for a new type of financial system, but then extend access universally across the world. And the way to do this is, of course, as we've said, to build this very high performance network, and then to create a mobile application that is extremely simple to use and that opens up this world to anyone in the world without having them to learn everything from scratch. So I do believe that this is the most fundamental thing that we can contribute, and if this happens, we'll have a much richer and better world in many ways, just because economic growth tends to be strongly correlated with everything that we really love in a society, and the fact that we're opening this new opportunity for new people, for all the people in the world, that's tremendously important. Now, the end state that is definitely going to sound outlandish at first is us reaching a point that is or could be put on a Kardashev scale of progress, where what's even better than having a high performance financial system that works instantly across the world, inexpensively, and that everyone has access to, is this grand transition from this type of economy or financial system to a post-scarcity economy. Now that's, I'm sure, mind-blowing at first, because you cannot initially conceive how many things need to change for something like this to happen. But I believe that this is very similar to something like reusable rockets. The fact that people did not believe that this could be done did not mean anything, because it did not break the laws of physics and so forth. So the fact that we're now close to having this type of rapidly reusable rockets that work should make us think really hard about what the fundamental end goal problems are in some of these fields. And I do believe that in finance and economy, there's definitely this thing that would change the entire game, and that's a post-scarcity economy. So how fast we would reach there, that's a different conversation. Of course, there are some tremendously difficult problems to tackle on that road. solving the two problems that I was mentioning before is definitely a place to start. But the grand thing is that on top of this type of technology, on top of this type of application that everyone would have access to, the great part is that if we would want to deploy some type of universal digital income, you could do it just from one day to the other, because logistics would not be a problem, infrastructure would not be a problem. So the scale of what we could do with this type of infrastructure is tremendously exciting. And yeah, can't wait for us to push toward that goal and to discover what other new ways there are for this type of technology to be really used.
One last question. Tell me one word which defines your team.
I'd almost say that there's a tension between two words. Let's say exceptional and hardcore. So somewhere in between of those. That's where the Elrond spirit stands.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Beniamin.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for the conversation.
Sibiu was such an unlikely place to start a global tech company, and it just proves a point that following your dreams are not necessarily bound by stereotypes or boundaries. Romania seems to be always rising, and younger people have more courage to start building cool stuff. The EU seems to be lagging behind in supporting the blockchain startup space. We hope that they might wake up soon before they lose all of the talent. Elrond is a story of a bunch of smart people, many of them friends embarking on a crazy journey to deliver one of the most hardcore technologies in the world. They've made it, and to my surprise, they are still hungry for more. Beniamin seems to be a leader like no other. He seems very connected with his team, always smiling, and his passion for Elrond is contagious. No wonder people from around the globe like to follow him. I felt it whilst I was there. I told you a story which, even though I started 2 years ago, it feels like the beginning of something greater. Maybe one day I'll return, and I cannot wait to see what I'll experience then. Elrond, I'll see you again.